All right. Hello, everyone. Let me know you can see me and hear me okay. Don't have to worry about being quiet this time. Izzy is at Grandma's house, so should have some time today to do two streams. This one is just going to be a very quick stream to kind of go over some of the stuff where we ended. So if you've been watching all the streams at the end of part 2 where Jess and I were pairing, we were kind of like, if we start parsing, the class file this way, like we're not going to be able to have like valid PHP at the end. So then it was kind of like a chicken egg problem. So I thought about that since, and basically I think the best approach is going to be to create, or at least the simplest approach, which I think is best, is to basically make a copy of the PHPUnit file and then start bringing pieces of it over to create that Pest file. So let's take a quick peek at kind of the pseudo code I did for that, and maybe we'll take a minute and bring some of this to life to kind of set up that extra step that I didn't really forecast on Monday in the first stream. That way we're ready for this afternoon to kind of really start hopefully converting some of the test cases and wrapping those. So let's bring up the Pest converter, and this is kind of the step that I'm talking about. So previously we kind of were just saying like remove this class to script, and that's the piece that was up here. And we started building that in, again, part 2, and we were just kind of like, this is going to get weird really quick. So I think we're going to basically invert all these, or reverse order the way I'd kind of written these out on Monday. So before we were like, oh, well, we'll remove the, class wrapper, and then we'll bring over the test cases, and then we'll bring over the setup methods and blah, blah, blah. I think it's actually needs to be the other way around. We need to move all of the methods potentially first, and then finally break out any of the class wrapping, use statement, import kind of stuff. And then after we do all those steps, we know that at that point we can just remove that little sample copy that we made, and then ultimately be done converting those tests. The only reason I kind of liked the idea of moving these over one by one was to maybe create atomic commits around the changes. But I got to thinking about that, and Shift really doesn't leave any commits, or it doesn't leave your repo in a state where like the commits would be like a broken state. So because of that, you have to remember that kind of all this is going to happen in the background. So it's not like you're going to have .pest or .temp or .stub files or .back files like in your project at any point in time, because the commit really doesn't happen until, here. And here's where we would say something like, PHP pest converter, and then, test cases or pest tests or something like that. So this would just be a real simple markdown file which embodies whatever I would want that commit message to say. So the point is that all of these tasks effectively happen as a group together before a particular commit is made. So let's just go ahead and import that. That way we kind of can see that that's going to happen. And what I'd like to do real quick again in this stream, just take about hopefully 15 minutes and spike out kind of this, copy the tests, and then replace the original ones. Because again, those were kind of tasks that I didn't really expect. And the rough forecast was to do probably 2 of these per stream. So Jess and I did 2 yesterday. So if we can do 2 now, and then maybe 1 or 2 this afternoon, Jess will do 2 and I tomorrow, and then we'll get to a place where again the MVP, which is this portion, hopefully by the end of the stream Friday, and then maybe over the weekend I can work on some of these like nice to have cooler things that again just give Shift that polish that could end up working really well. So let's build one of these here, and we'll just say something like copy tests, and we're going to bring this to life real quick. And I may backfill a test for this, but again, I think in the interest of time, I'm just going to kind of spike this out, because this is really going to be a pretty straightforward set of system commands. We're just going to find all your test files and basically make a Pest copy of them. So it's really just a bunch of, command line, copy commands. So there might be a little bit more I end up having to do, but it really shouldn't be that much. So let's just write it, I think, for now and see what it ends up looking like. Hey, Adrian, Owen, Christoph, thanks for joining. Samuel, hey, everybody. Glad you all can join. This was kind of an off-schedule live stream, but again, there's some stuff that needs to be caught up on. Okay, so what we're going to do is basically we're going to get some output from just a really raw system command. And this command is basically going to find in tests any type that's a file. It has a name, which extension, this will need to be escaped for the command line, is star.php. So any kind of PHP test file, PHPUnit test file. And again, we're assuming some conventions here. This can all be configured after the MVP, but we're assuming that things are in the test folder, and we're assuming that you're following PHPUnit's test convention. I know you can configure this, but I've never really taken the time to do that. I doubt many projects are running tests that are not using that kind of convention. If somehow you don't have any tests, whatever, so we'll just say empty. If somehow that's empty output, then we can basically just return. Otherwise, we would get a series of paths from that by effectively preg splitting that. And I've done this in some other shifts, so you'll just have to take my word for how that looks. But basically, if we trim the output. So again, find, if we just kind of demo this real quick on my own command line, we'll have to get rid of those backticks there. So we'll see that it would dump this out all on one line. So that's basically what this is doing. If somehow this is empty, then you don't have any pest tests. There's nothing to really convert. If you do have some output, then it's going to be broken up line by line. We'll just split that on any kind of line breaks. Because again, you have to remember that shift is a very widely used thing now, especially with the workbench. So I use this /R to denote any type of line break, and this is really just a regex shorthand for, /R/in or /n kind of thing. So basically what I'm saying there is Windows, Mac, old Mac, and then Linux. It's going to respect whatever line breaks that command will kick out for us. So the workbench, for example, the desktop app, can be run in a Windows environment. So I got to be mindful about things like that. Okay, and then at this point it's pretty straightforward. We were just going to for each these paths as path, and we'll basically make a copy so we can just run another shift command to effectively clone whatever that is. So, yep, Adrian, I got you. PHP Storm helps me figure that out. I don't know why it didn't autocomplete it though when I hit enter on the very first one, but all good now. So let's do copy path, and then we'll just copy the same path, and we're going to give it a .pest extension. So yeah, so that copy command is it. This is it. So it's a really simple, bit of code here. It's going to be pretty obvious if this is not working. Again, some of the fundamental things in Shift I don't really write a test for, because I know my practice is to manually test these, manually run these on my own applications, for example, to convert to Pest. So since this is such a core thing to copy these files, none of these downstream tasks would end up working. So it's probably not something I will ultimately end up writing a test for. We'll leave this as is for now, or I may write copy test, but maybe not like the remove. So we'll see. Let's go ahead and do the remove one though. So this will be replace original, originals, I guess. We'll keep the plural going. And let's bring this up, and I'm just going to copy and paste replace originals, and this is replace originals. And we're effectively going to just do the same thing here, but in reverse. So we'll basically find all test.php.pest extensions. If for some reason there aren't any, fine, ignore it. Otherwise, again, split the lines. And in this case, we're going to move -f just to make sure, since we know that there's going to be, a potential conflict there, of course. So overwrite the original file, and then we could really just do substring path 0 -5 to chop off that .pest extension. All right, let's make sure this looks good. So this will be a move -f or to force overwrite it. We're going to take the original pest file and then replace it or move it into that same extension, but not pest, which is, according to PHP Storm down here, 5 characters, so -5 on the length. James, what keyboard do you use? This is just the Mac keyboard. I think because I'm using the shotgun mic, you're picking up a little bit more noise in the room. There's probably a slight bit of an echo too, but I like being able to have the hands free. So yeah, you're just hearing my big old fat fingers clanking away on that keyboard. Nothing fancy. It's not like a mechanical keyboard or anything. So let's get into Docker, since that all went pretty quick, and maybe I will backfill a test on one of those because I'm thinking about it a bit more, and that copy files, we're going to need it to do just a bit more than it's doing right now. So first, let's run bin PHPUnit. And while that's running, I just want to go back, and this is all good. Just want to take a peek at this. I don't think it's as simple as a copy. And here's why. We really need to create kind of a stub for that pest file. We're not just copying the whole thing over. Otherwise, we're really just going to end up in the same problem. What we need to do is create a new skeleton for the pest file. And by skeleton, what I would mean is just bringing up one of our own tests. Let's just look at this dependencies test. Dependence. Oh, where is that? Well, let's find it this way. This guy is what I'm looking for in the test. I don't know why that didn't come up a second ago. So really we would want like this section minus the namespace, because I don't think Pest uses any namespaces because they're all just kind of script files. So I would want this section of that file. So really what copy test needs to do is get, let's call it the header from original test, drop namespace, and then copy to new pest, like .pest test. So this is really what we're going to need to do there. So just kind of demonstrating that by highlighting kind of what I would want to see happen is we would want to pull this in and then drop that namespace. So effectively we get that left, right? We don't want any of the class. We're going to parse that out later with the syntax tree, but we can probably just use some string manipulation to do the right thing here because we can trust that this file has class somewhere in it. So let's make this happen. So I think to drive this out properly, I will write a test for it, and then we'll end there for this first live stream of the day. That'll give me a chance to get some lunch, think on some of the bigger tasks like parsing out the rest of this. So let's do class to script because I think that's going to have a pretty good foundation for what we want, and I'll change this to copy tests test. And let's pull all these up. Copy tests. All right, that should be good to go. Let's see if we have any failures. And we do. We still have a class failure for that class to script test. That makes sense because, again, that's unfinished. This is the test that kind of led us down the path of, you know what, we need to do this a little bit differently. So let's ignore that just for the moment. I might mark it incomplete so we're in a passing state for this afternoon, but for now, we're going to run this copy test test, and it's all just a copy of that class thing. So let's start making this do the right thing. So basically, it does nothing when no tests are found. Okay, so find test of type, this will be test, and we're going to print those out. And in this case, we don't want to return anything, so we can just return empty effectively. And then finally, in this case, there is a fixture. So let's actually go back just a bit and steal this and make a separate test case. So it does nothing when no tests are found. We're going to run that command, and now we want to say nothing's returned from that find command. We'll do this subject perform, which subject is our copy test. And then actually, you know what? It would be nice if it maybe just logged out should have received event for maybe something like no PHP unit test found. I would just want to know, and I like these little log events again. They're all very anonymous, very innocuous, but they help me from a support perspective. If someone emails me and says, hey, I ran the Pest converter and it didn't do anything. Well, I'm going to be able to go, hey, what's your shift number? Oh, it's 500,000 or whatever. And I'm going to be able to go look at this log, right? And it's going to say no PHP tests found. And now I'm going to know, oh, well, hey, are you using a custom test format or whatever? So that's going to help me make this more robust, make me be able to support the product. Otherwise, it's all very black box. So these little, I call them tracer bullets, kind of help me see maybe what was going on without, having to ask for access to the code or have them send me stuff or a lot of support back and forth. So again, just really simple tracer bullets. They're kind of analytics. They're half analytics, half kind of debug, but they don't really contain anything of huge value. It just kind of gives me a point in the right direction. What does @test do versus just @test? I don't understand the question. I think you're talking about the annotations, but versus just @test. I'm not sure. Let me know what you're asking there, and I'll try to address it. Okay, so it should do nothing, but it's not going to log that event right now. So let's run this again. Oh, double name. So it creates a copy of let's just say this a little easier. It copies PHPUnit tests with file header is what we'll call it. All right, let's run this again, and now we should see call to mockery with no args, invalid argument, no PHP tests found. Okay, yeah, so it never called log. It's kind of a weird call to mockery expectation with args with an invalid argument. Oh. This needs to be an array. You always got to read those messages because that actually wasn't the correct failure. There we go. Method event should be called. There we go. That's the proper event. So this should have received is an array of arguments. So let's make this pass first. We can do that pretty simply with log event no PHP unit tests found. All right. All right, so our first one's passing, great, and then now it's trying to run that copy command and go from there. Let's see, is it a multiline comment? Yes, you are right, it is a multiline comment. That's just PHP Storm collapsing those. I think it can be disabled. It's kind of annoying sometimes to have to click, but when I first opened the file, I like it. I think you can expand everything. I don't know, if Christoph is in here, he could tell us all the cool commands, but I think if you do Command-Shift+, yeah, Command-Shift+, or Control-Shift+, they'll expand everything. So it's just kind of collapsed by default, which again, I'm sure can be a preference. But yeah, this is just kind of what I consider a Laravel convention for writing application tests. A lot of the docs use it and so forth. It's kind of a community convention. It's not like de facto convention or anything, but okay. Let's take a look at this, and I really don't need to worry too much about all this. Let's just say basic test. There's really no reason to kind of worry about multiple, like kind of multi-lines here. So let's make this look like this, I think. There we go. Yeah, just one test is kind of enough here. So really what we're going to do is we're going to simulate finding a basic test. We're going to get that file, and this is going to be basic test. We'll make sure to make that fixture here in a second. And then what we would expect is, we don't need all this extra stub stuff. We would expect to put file contents for a basic test.php.pest, and then using our kind of basic, let's call it basic test stub, maybe, because it's not really like the final version of this basic test. I like to call those after or final. That's just kind of my fixture naming convention. This is just kind of like the stub. It's kind of like the in-between version of what we're after. There's no add comment, so we can get rid of that. There's no logs, and there's no comment assertion. So this, I think, is a proper test. We're going to run that same command. We're going to find all tests. In this case, we're going to get a basic test back. We're going to wire up a fixture that's going to look like a test, and then we're ultimately going to wire up what the fixture should look like when we print it back out. So this will be a better indication of what copy test should do. So of course this is going to fail because basic test stub does not exist. So let's just touch that. Just an empty thing. So now we should have no matching handler found for command. We don't want to run that command anymore, so let's copy this out. And let's see. Okay, method get file. That makes sense. We never call get file, so let's do it. So now we're just kind of like following along with what shift tells us, or the test kind of guides us to do. So this is the test, shift get file. There's the path. All right. And now it's expecting put contents, in this case with nothing, and it should pass. So let's just say something real simple here, like shift put file contents, path.pest. We can steal that from earlier. And according to the test, I can just output a empty bit there. And it passes. Now that's not very good, right? Because, that's obviously incomplete. But the point is that once we build out this fixture, this test will begin to fail again, which is what we want. So let's go build that out. I heard some stuff in the chat though. Let's see what's going on. I find everything around testing a bit confusing. However, the way he has shift set up looks like a pleasant code base. Yeah, shift didn't start here, in fairness, overnight. I mean, it took a while to build up all these kind of test fixtures and, that facade and so forth. But to your point, that is one of the beauties of tests. There are a lot of beauties of tests, but one of the beauties is that once you do have a test suite set up, you kind of it makes you, I think, keep your code, a little cleaner. It's easier to work with, it's easier to maintain, right? It just feels so nice and tidy, right? When you do have those tests. So it absolutely is not something that kind of happens overnight. But as you grow and grow them, I think it makes you a better developer simply in the fact that you kind of care a bit more, right? There's all sorts of other things too. I mean, that's just one of probably 20 things I could say about testing being cool. But yeah, it's pretty nice. And even just the implementation, when you write that test first, like this became very, very easy, right? I'd already kind of, indirectly thought out what needs to happen. I just made a little pseudo code to kind of get my mind around what happens. And then I just wrote the test for that. And then a lot of it just ended up being filling in the blanks, right? Doing what the test failures told me to do. So, all right, let's get to that basic test. Whoops, basic test. Okay, so this is a basic test. This should be okay. It's not like super complex. Like I could say something a little cooler here, like, you know, @C PHP unit. What can we bring up here? Like, is there assertions? Oh, I need the global. Is there any kind of like annotation framework? Assert. There we go. What does this have? It's just got a bunch of asserts in it. Okay, cool. I just want to like have a little comment here to kind of, you know, give us some more stuff to kind of push the boundary on that. Okay, so let's write the after of what this should be. So basic test stub should be this, right? Minus this. So in an ideal world, this would be what we ended up pulling over inside of our tests. That would be pretty cool. Okay, so yeah, let's do that. And I think this will be good. Should I have a line break or not? Probably so. Probably so. Okay, so now when we run this test again, we should get a failure because put contents wasn't matched from our test perspective, right? That this empty string does not match what we expect. So we can try to dump out contents now, and that of course is just going to give us the whole test. So that's not going to help us either. So now we need to do kind of these last two pieces. Let me check the time here because I've got about 5 minutes left. I do have something else I have to get done over lunch before streaming later. So probably the simplest thing to do right now, and again, I should write more test cases to kind of push this out. But basically, I think we should probably bring up, we could just get file gives us a file, and I think we can search this file for like a certain bit of lines. I think segment, I think there's a search in here. Insert, nope. I thought there was like a find. Oh, here's find. Find string needle offset string position. This isn't awesome, but here's what we're gonna do. Just to try to get this to pass real quick, let's do line equals, or well, let's do stub equals, or I think we were calling this header. Header equals test segment 1 to test find class. I'm just going to do a class space for now, but what I could end up doing is getting this path name and then therefore knowing what the class name was, and that would be a much more robust kind of check to find. Or we could even put a pattern. I could update this to be able to allow me to do a pattern to make sure that's at the beginning of the line and all that kind of stuff. But if we're looking line by line, I think it's pretty unlikely that the only content on that line would be class name extends, right? That would just be a very, I don't know what PHP you're writing if that were able to be found. So let's just kind of see what this looks like real quick. This isn't going to be 100%, but it should start to get the header. And then I will fill in the blanks on the rest of this. Okay, there we go. So it did include the class itself, which is a little bit too much. So we could pretty easily just -1 on that. And now we do have the header we want minus that namespace. That's going to be very easy to remove with a regular expression. So we'll just basically say something here like header equals preg, replace, any kind of line that's, namespace equals, namespace and then a space of some kind, and then we'll fill in some blank on the name here, but just to kind of push this quickly, do that, and maybe just whatever space is behind it, like whatever kind of /r. Well, maybe not multiple. We would just take one of those /r's, I think. I'm not too sure, actually. Let's leave that alone for a second. We'll see what we end up with, and then this will be header. And of course the replacement is nothing. So let's just kind of see if that gets a little closer. Nope. So my regex is probably a bit off here. Namespace /w. That should have liked it. Well, let's comment that out, and we'll get this the right way here in a second. All right, let me check the chat. I'll do, again, another live stream this afternoon about 4 hours from now, about 3.5 hours from now. Give me just enough time to finish everything else. Adrian, why use and not uses? These are like, I guess these are common uses. Like this will probably end up ultimately getting replaced like downstream. You have to remember there's other tasks that are going to be run. So I really just want that rough header for now. I don't really want to like do any pest conversions inside of copy test. Like copy test goal is just to copy the tests into this .pest file for then to me manipulate into pest the rest of the way. I also don't think it would be uncommon to have generic use statements like native PHP use statements inside of your pest test. I know that they use @uses, but we'll look at that later for traits and so forth. That was my understanding anyways, so we'll see. All right, well, I'll finish this, commit it up, and then hopefully this afternoon in that stream, we will work on, porting over some of the methods into this .pest extension file. So if we can fill in the blanks here, then I think we will have the MVP, so that will be pretty cool. So thanks everybody for joining for the impromptu live stream. Hopefully I'll see some of you this afternoon here in a couple hours. If not, maybe catch Jess and I tomorrow. See you.